things. So when it gets cold outside and you hear the hey big head, hey big head, hey big head, hey big head, hey big head. Man, you hoes. You and your mammy and your granny too. I'm sick of this shit. Oh, you hoes. Don't give a damn, bitch, what you wanna do. They like the chaos.
They like the chaos. So when you're able to
The chaos.
let that chaos reign with,
The chaos.
let that chaos reign with,
The chaos.
let that chaos reign with.
Must reign.
All right, guys. All right. Welcome to another session, another great, wonderful debate here, and an overview and a commentary here on the Chaos Reign Show. I am Chaos Reign. The links to follow me are in the description below. You can follow me on Twitter at ChaosReign7. You can add me as a friend on Facebook, Eric Ray on Facebook. You can also join the Discord service. Follow me on Rumble, CRain23 on Rumble. And last but not least, become a member of the Chaos Reign Show as well. And like always, all contributors will be granted and welcome to those that contribute to the Chaos Reign Show for the channel and any other endeavors. $20 or more, you get a special, and I mean a special, sound video clip for thanks to support the channel. All right, guys. So no further ado, you know what you came here for. You came here for to see this. Michael Knowles versus these feminists. 3 of them. A couple of them on that panel has an OnlyFans. Not surprising. This is going to be brutal. I tell you, it's going to be brutal. No further ado, let's go ahead. Fair use. Enjoy. Shout to the Weather Podcast. Let's go.
Feminism.
I think the most common definition is the social, political, and economic equality between the sexes. So according to that definition, I would definitely identify as a feminist.
Okay.
Yeah, in general, I agree with that definition. I believe that we should not be discriminated unfairly on the basis of sex. If I had to add any addition to feminism.
I would agree with all that, and then I would also add on just kind of adding more cultural currency to just female spaces, women's interests, and just women's proclivities in general.
That last, good if that's what it were, but I actually think feminism does the opposite of that in practice. And frankly, going all the way back to the beginning of feminism in the 18th century, probably my definition of feminism would be Gloria Steinem's definition. She was the very famous feminist of the second wave, which is that a woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle. Feminism is the idea that men and women are not complementary, they're not different and helpful to one another, but they're identical and indiscernible. That there are some superficial differences. You ladies might be a little prettier perhaps than I am, but all in all, we're basically exactly the same. And I don't think that's true. I think it's a false view of human nature, and I think it's harmful to everybody, and especially harmful to women.
Right. I've worked with Gloria Steinem's company, Women's Media Center, for like 4 years back in college.
My condolences.
And obviously that's like a more crass interpretation of, I think, what she meant by that, which I think is more so, she's more so characterizing the fact that women in general, when they're taught how to self-actualize, it's typically tied to contingency on a man and getting married and starting a family, versus men, when they're told the ways to self-actualize, it doesn't necessarily require a woman. So obviously her saying a woman needs a man the way a fish needs a bicycle sounds crass and like she's being a bit misandrous, and obviously some radical interpretations may take it that way. But I think what she's trying to say is that women, you can like define yourself and your career and your potential outside of simply marriage and children.
What do you mean by the phrase self-actualize?
Just like live up to your potential, use your rational faculties, use the design of your potential in your brain.
I agree that I want to live up to my highest potential. I want women to live up to their highest potential. I want total human flourishing. But I think you've given away the game on the radical and liberal foundation of feminism, which is the notion that it comes purely from the self. It's a matter of self-liberation that I can do totally self-sufficiently, as if I were an island unto myself. But no man is an island unto himself. And so I didn't make myself. I didn't create the family that I was born into. I didn't create the community that I was born into, the country that I was born into. I take the opposite view of the liberal view. The liberals say that man is fundamentally an individual. The conservatives would say, no, man is a social creature. You know, man is a political animal. And so the irony, I think, of someone like a Gloria Steinem saying that or insinuating that we just want women to live up to their fullest potential, is that the way that she and the feminists have done it is to totally erase women. And I think this goes back way further than the second wave. You sometimes hear conservatives, the squishy kind, they say, we love the feminism, but only the second wave, not the third wave, or we like the first wave, not the second, or whatever. We're on like the 10th wave now. But it's been a problem from the beginning. Even Mary Wollstonecraft, who founds feminism with the vindication of the rights of woman, she writes that Providence has created men in such a way that they are more inclined to virtue, and they're more endowed with virtue. And I think that's exactly what Gloria Steinem thinks, because the way that second wave feminism actually was practiced was it denied the virtues particular to women, and it said the only way to be virtuous and to flourish is to be a man. So if women want to be virtuous and flourish, they got to dress like men, and they got to have the same attitudes towards sex as men, and they got to work in the workplace exactly as men do, and they just have to pretend to be men. But I think that's very disrespectful to women and harmful to them, because if a woman tries to be a man, she's always going to fail. Just look at the Penn swim team now when the men compete against the women swimmers and defeat them. This is why some feminists wisely are turning against the transgender ideology. I think women are great. Women have a wonderful nature, and when women are fully women, they can really flourish. And when they pretend to be men, they get miserable.
I think what a lot of feminists would push back on or worry about is this idea that we have ascribed gender to certain things that are kind of agendered. So, for example, when it comes to the workplace, the idea that like, oh no, a woman must stay at home, going out and working is a man's job, seems to be something that a lot of people have contention with, because it seems like, I'm not saying that women don't have a place at home taking care of children, but it doesn't seem like it should necessarily be limited to just that. So for example, even like throughout history, you still have women who, despite taking care of home, also have like side jobs or side hustles or stuff like that to help contribute to the family. So I think this whole idea that's like, oh no, like women are just trying to be men. Sometimes I wonder, oh no, we are just saying that this is for a man to do, even though it seems like there's more opportunity for women to participate in those arenas as well.
I think you've just made my point, though, which is that you say throughout history, including long before feminism ever came onto the scene, women did plenty of things, you know, in addition to just being barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen, right? They had, they were involved in their community. They had side hustles, as you put it. So they did all these things. I mean, I think of the most famous anti-feminist American of the 20th century. It was Phyllis Schlafly. Phyllis Schlafly had 6 kids. She was a housewife. She said the only person whose permission she needs for her political activism is her husband's, which irritated feminists to no end. She's one of the most important political figures of the whole century. She single-handedly killed the Equal Rights Amendment, traveled all over the country, one of the most vaunted figures in the American right.
Oh, I forgot to say, as you guys come in, please like the stream. You can share the stream. If you have any thoughts and opinions, leave it in the chat room. Super chat will be more readily available and better to read. But if you think you have some more credible to add on to this debate, leave it in the chat room. But the only way you get that is to subscribe to the channel. One thing about these feminists, before we continue, and it looks like it's going well so far. These ladies, if they don't have it their way, they will in turn start throw the table in this conversation and really F it's up, or I should say F crap up. So pay attention closely on the back and forth with this, and let's see how Michael Knowles holds up his end of bargain with these 3 ladies. Let's go.
She was able to do a lot of things in public, but she recognized that her particular role that her husband never could have, that no man on earth ever could have, even if he kids himself, is to have children, to be a woman, to be graceful, to do the things that men can't do. And so she can do things beyond that as well. But if you erase the particular advantages of women, then women are put at a disadvantage.
I mean, the problem is women were also excluded from doing a lot of things. So I don't think anyone here thinks there are no differences between men and women. But there's a lot of overlap as well. And while men and women may be different on something on average, to look at a woman like I think you and some of your other conservatives are under fire for saying, oh, if it's a female pilot, I'm automatically going to assume that this person is incompetent.
I've never said that. Though if an airline tells me that they are prioritizing DEI over merit in the cockpit, I would probably book another airline.
Okay, and I guess that's a little different. I get what I get that. But my point is like to say women are just emotional, more emotional than men. That may be true on average, but to then look at a woman and just be like, automatically I'm going to assume this woman is more emotional. I think that isn't, that's the lack.
So why is it true on average though?
It may be true on average because we're different. I've never said we're not different,
right.
But the problem is to say we're different and then put us into categories and be like, there can be no overlap. Women have to do this role and men have to do this role. That's, I think, what feminism is pushing back on.
What you're arguing for is a kind of feminism that says, actually, all the differences between men and women, that's totally true in the aggregate, in these two different types. But on rare occasion, there's going to be some woman.
It's not that rare. Like, let's say, gender roles. Like, let's say most people, let's say 70 to 80% of people will fall into natural gender roles. But then there's still 20% of our population that may not. And do we make a society where we force that 20% into these roles, or do we allow choice? I think a lot of feminism, the cornerstone of feminism is choice for women. You can't stay home.
I'm not so sure about that. I'm not so sure, because there was a famous debate between Betty Friedan, who was the prominent American feminist, and Simone de Beauvoir, one of the most famous feminists of the 20th century. It was in 1975, and Betty Friedan said what you said. She said, look, I think we should give women a choice. Maybe they want to go out into the workplace, or maybe they want to stay home and raise their kids, but they should have a choice. And Simone de Beauvoir, who was a more consistent and intelligent feminist, said there can't be a choice. And the reason there can't be a choice is that if given the choice, most women would stay at home. And if most women stay at home, women will not be free. If we want true women's liberation, women must be forced to be free. And Friedan recoiled from this because she knew it wasn't going to play well in Peoria. But Simone de Beauvoir had the right point, and I think the more consistent feminists have agreed with her.
I don't know. I mean, feminism has, it's gone so many different directions, so to pick the feminists that we don't agree with for this debate, I don't know if that's conducive to.
Also, I'm not necessarily sure when you're saying most women would stay at home. That's a choice that they would have. Because when you look at the uprisings of feminism, or when it gained the most traction, it was post-war era. Partly because of the reason why is because during these war eras, men went out, they were drafted, they had to go fight, et cetera, et cetera. Women were expected to take up more traditional male spaces, work. And when the men came back, what ended up happening is that a lot of women did not want to leave the jobs that they had. They wanted to keep the somewhat level of financial independence that they were able to gain. And that's why we see these huge feminist uprisings during those periods of time. So it seems to me, if you're saying that most women would stay home, that just wouldn't happen. Women would have not had these feminist movements go forward.
Well, the feminists didn't want to leave their jobs, but women broadly perhaps did. So anecdotally, people write in a lot and they tell me, Michael, at least while my kids are little, I'd love to stay home and raise them. Maybe I'll go back to work after, but I just can't. You can't raise a family in America for the average person today on one income. And that's a result of women entering the workforce and wages decrease, which is why not only the radical left, but also the more commercially minded right wing was in favor of that. It's the same reason they're in favor of mass migration. It just lowers wages for people. A lot of women, however, seem to feel not that they have the choice to go to work, but that they have to. And this is expressed in a famous study that came out of UPenn and was published by Yale in 2008, which was the paradox of declining female happiness. And I love the way this study opens up. Right in the abstract it says, despite the past 35 years, I'm paraphrasing, but despite the past 35 years showing so much marked progress and improvement in the lives of women, women's happiness, according to this meta-analysis, has declined, both absolutely and relative to men. So it's not even just that everyone got more miserable because of, a bad economy or something. Women in particular became less happy, despite all these objective improvements to their lives. So to me, the obvious rejoinder to that is, well, maybe those objective improvements, namely feminism, that's the thing that happened between 1973 and 2008, maybe that wasn't an objective good. Maybe that was just illusory.
Well, to me, the obvious rejoinder of that is that women are becoming disillusioned with the life they had prior. They're like leaving the cave, so to speak, allegorically. And also, I don't think you should use self-reported happiness as a metric of justice or any like objective good, because you can plot self-reported happiness with pretty much any variable. Like highest reported crime, violent crime in the United States, also is directly correlated to self-reported happiness. Does that mean one causes the other? No. Does that mean we should think
what do you mean by that?
Crime
Highest violent crime is correlated?
I'm just saying in the periods of time when we've had the most violent crime in the United States, there's also a correlation between highest rates of self-reported happiness.
Well, not according to the survey I just cited, right? If happiness has been declining steadily, especially for women since 1973 to 2008, you had a major crime spike in the early 90s, but you didn't have a major spike in happiness. So perhaps there's some survey that you're referring to in some city somewhere,
Well,
but it wouldn't.
But also, even women
this.
living traditional lifestyles are seeing a downfall in happiness. So why is it that the women who are still living the type of lifestyle that you would probably prescribe to women are also having a decrease in happiness?
Also,
I'm not convinced of that.
The Institute of Family Studies did a big, and there's a lot of data out there that actually children make you less happy. So there is this problem happening where we're like, okay, why are people less happy? But we don't know. We don't know what it is.
I'm not so sure. Again,
and then you would expect then that if you looked at the most unhappiest countries, you would expect Canada, the Nordic countries, Scandinavian countries, because they're very egalitarian, and you're not seeing that they actually have higher happiness levels.
Well,
than
they have the highest rates of alcoholism in the world. You think of Denmark, Norway, Iceland, and
So what the hell is this stupid OnlyFans bitch talking about egalitarian and the happiness? Listen, most cities, lands, countries, wherever you want to name, are really run and controlled by men, i.e. patriarchs. So if you, as a person, looking for a man that will be so matriarchal to you, they got them, but these dudes are not going to be very much productive. I'm just saying. Anyhow, let's keep going.
particular.
But
So I don't know how happy they are.
Now you're changing, but if we're gonna just go by what makes people
I don't think
happy,
alcoholics
I
are
don't
like the
know if
happiest
I think there are arguments to be made about like community and those things may make people less happy. But this idea that's because women aren't having children, when we also have data, a lot of data that shows children, especially in the United States, has the biggest happiness gap, and then we're seeing that other countries that are more feminist are also not having, like, if you compare like Scandinavian countries to like the East, like my parents are immigrants from Iran. Iran has really high unhappiness levels. A lot of countries
Naturally,
where,
yeah.
Exactly. So I don't know if you can say that this is causing that, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, Nordic countries also have much more homogeneity, which is correlated with political happiness. But so they're all of those differences. Mm-hmm. But I think the point about children making you unhappy and the point about leaving the cave, I think those are both a little bit of a cope, because they're belied by the fact that if it were just that women were coming into their own now and they were recognizing the oppression of which they were not conscious previously, then why would they keep getting less and less happy? You know, at a certain point, aren't you supposed to turn the corner and become more happy in your independence? But that's not what's happened. For 35 years, it just gets worse, worse, and worse, including relative to men. And then for children, you look over the past, 70 plus years now, 74 years, since 1950 to present day, the marriage rate has dropped by 60%, and the birth rate has dropped by 50%. So just looking at the whole society, we are having many, many fewer children than we were before.
But
and yet we're
the whole
much
world
less
is.
happy.
Even like places like Pakistan are having less kids.
Sure, I'm just pointing out, you're saying that having fewer children makes you happier, and I'm saying we're having many fewer children and Americans are much less happy. And you see this even beyond just
but that's
random
not,
surveys.
You can't link that.
I kind of want to push back on this idea that we've gotten more unhappy as time has progressed, because at least to my understanding, what's happened in the last 20 or 30 years is an increased awareness of mental health and what that means. So it's not necessarily that people were really happy before and now suddenly are miserable. Yeah. It's just that now we're actually having data where people can talk openly about their mental health, unhappiness, and not be as stigmatized as before. Mm-hmm. If we look at the 1950s and even housewives around that time, we see there is actually a huge rate of narcotic usage and basically prescriptions to that level. So I'm not necessarily, if I would go as far to say, we've gotten we've gotten more unhappy as time has gone by. I would say more likely, oh no, we've been able to properly report, measure, and assess mental health as time has gone by.
And medicate.
Listen, I'm very inclined towards your view that social scientific studies are bunk. I mean, there's a major replication prices. I think it's all ridiculous. I will cite those social science stats when they serve my argument, because why not? That's what we do these days. But I agree. I'm skeptical of measuring happiness and all the rest of it. But on the mental health point, I think here we do have some pretty firm data, and it contradicts the argument you're making, which is right now, 1 in 5 middle-aged women in the country is hooked on antidepressant drugs. On any given day, they're taking them. Women are 2.5 times as likely as men to take these depression drugs. It is ubiquitous at this point. And the rates of taking depression drugs are going up. It's getting much worse. So if we're not getting less and less happy, why do people keep taking more and more depression drugs?
No, why were housewives in the 50s downing like a...
I'd say why. Because women, from my understanding, they don't serve their actual purpose. And that is, on default, a helpmate to a man. And they're in the world, not of the world, but in the world, working and doing things that men typically do, work long hours, might make some money, and have less time for themselves. That's why a lot of them are unhappy. That is a possibly another scenario why they're unhappy. And there's more of a science of happiness, but we could surely say that most women nowadays, if they can't have it all or they can't be in a certain control, yeah, they'll be unhappy. And that's what we're seeing right now. Let's continue.
Bottle of wine at lunch every day. I'm just saying now
I'm not so sure. I mean, these are anecdotes.
We're supplanting self-medication now with actually like medically backed drugs that actually help women with their mental health issues.
I don't know that
it's
they
also
help.
now that when you're sad, you just go to the doctor and they give you antidepressant drugs. I don't know how much more depressed people actually are, other than the fact that they're just dishing them out to everybody.
And they're dishing them out more and more and more. Sure, you can blame the pharmaceutical industry or the medical industry. I'm just pointing out, in order to argue against these social science statistics, one has to just turn toward unfalsifiable anecdotes and memes. Though the housewives were all miserable in the 50s, they were secretly, drinking behind their husbands' backs. But I don't know, maybe they were, maybe they weren't. All I have are the data available
Well, the data
to me,
is
and the
just
data
saying that
worse.
more people are on antidepressants. It's not telling you why. It's not telling you what caused it. It's not telling you.
Depression,
that's
presumably, is causing
well,
it.
that's what we're debating here: is what could have caused it. You're saying, oh, it's.
No, but I'm not saying, maybe they hate their husband, maybe they hate their kids, maybe they don't like the weather in their town.
Like, I think
but
ADHD
in any
is
case,
a great example of this. Anyone now can just be like, oh, I have trouble focusing. Does everyone have ADHD, or are people just getting these drugs? Like, these are questions that we should ask before we jump to a conclusion. That
I agree. Look, I think that they're pathologizing a lot of ordinary aspects of human nature. But I think part of the reason that we do that is because we're so radically misinterpreting human nature, which brings us right back to feminism. The clearest example of this is the transgender argument, which is all anyone ever talks about these days. I'm frankly sick of it. We know that men and women are different, but that shows you, a major confusion about human nature. If a man can become a woman, then we have been really wrong about anthropology for a long time. And most reasonable people know a man can't become a woman. But that error in human nature goes back much earlier than transgenderism. This is why I have pity for the feminists who are trans-exclusionary radical feminists, because they don't realize that it was their own ideology that led to this. The premise of transgenderism is that men and women are basically the same, so much so that one can become the other. But if that's true, then that has to come from somewhere. And where it came from was the redefinition of marriage, to say that a man and a woman is the same as a man and a man is the same as a woman and a woman. And that comes from the sexual revolution, and that comes from feminism, which says a woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle. I agree. These errors in human nature can lead to all sorts of problems.
Did you say transgenderism is people thinking that there's no differences, and why would they need to transition?
That's a great question.
I don't think that's what transgenderism believes, that there's no difference between men and women.
Transgenderism believes that men and women are so similar that one can become the other. Which is different than the feminists who say men and women are so similar that a woman can do anything a man can do. But transgenderism takes that principle to the extreme, which is men and women are so similar. They're not complementary. Sex is not immutable. It's not an inseparable accident of being, as an Aristotelian or St. Thomas Aquinas might say. But no, it's actually just kind of a social construct. And it's so socially constructed that I can go down to my doctor and have him reconstruct my chest, and all of a sudden I've magically become the opposite sex. That error comes from feminism.
Okay, before we pivot to transgenderism, can we go back to the happiness feminist conversation
Sure.
and tie it up? So I wanted to ask you, do you think that should be the ultimate good and the metric for which we base our justice system and our just overall societal progress on, is self-reported happiness?
Well, I don't know even what you mean by societal progress. I mean, justice is a habit of virtue that inclines the will to give to one what he deserves, right? So it's about deserts.
Right.
And so we protect certain rights and we enforce certain laws, at least we used to. We don't really do that as much in this country anymore. And an aspect of political justice would be human flourishing. So when we talk about happiness, I'm very interested in happiness, but I'm interested in happiness in the way that Aristotle's interested in happiness, which is eudaimonia, a way to live the best possible life. And I think that we can know something about that through our faculties of reason, which are objective, and if reason weren't objective and at least somewhat reliable, we couldn't have self-government. Now, the way that happiness is often used in our modern culture is just
hedonism.
Is hedonism, like the utilitarians, right? Just means getting pleasure and avoiding pain, or is just totally subjective to the point where you say, well, don't yuck my yum. What's de gustibus non disputandum est. Maybe I like this and you don't like this. Well, sure. I mean, restaurants have menus for a reason, but there must be some limiting principle here. We must know something about what is conducive to human happiness. And if we don't, then how do we have self-government?
So I want to go back.
Really agree. I just don't know if self-reported happiness is more congruent with the subjective reports of happiness, or that eudaimonia that you're referring to.
Sure, it's just the best we've got.
Well, and also
I totally agree.
Something you said in the beginning about individualism. Like, do you prefer sociocentric countries? Do you not love America and the?
What do you mean sociocentric?
Like countries where, like, you're like, oh, part of the problem with feminism is so focused on the self. Well, I think that is one of the cornerstones of like Western civilization. Is instead of being
a very liberal view of Western civilization.
Yeah, which I think is what makes Western civilization so wonderful. Like, we are one of the only, I think we are like the only one founded on individualistic rights, like principles that
I don't think we really are founded that way. I think that's what people say we were founded on now. But you hear a phrase like liberal democracy. That's the popular way to describe our country now. That phrase appears basically nowhere in the English language until the 30s. Then it jumps a little bit in the 40s. It really doesn't take off in English literature until the 80s. America, the Founding Fathers didn't think of us as a liberal democracy. They were influenced by some Enlightenment thinkers, John Locke and Montesquieu say, but they were also influenced by the classical tradition. And the classical tradition is one of the common good, not in the communist sense of that. But again, they thought the common good was best pursued by having individual rights instead of, like, that's one of the reasons we founded ourselves on a separation of church and state. You have the right. We were not founded on a separation of church and state. Yeah, I mean, we can get into that. I think sure. It's well, incidental to this point, but it appears in no founding document. There's one errant letter from Thomas Jefferson to a friend that mentions the phrase, and the Treaty of Tripoli makes some little knock on Christianity to appease the Muslim pirates who were capturing our sailors. But when the First Amendment established no church at the national level, the reason for that is not that there was a firm separation of church and state. It's because there were already established churches at the state level in many states that persisted for decades after the Constitution. The only reference to God in the whole thing is that you can't have a test for political office. They purposely left it out. You're saying that they didn't need to found the state. They refer to religion explicitly, and they say we won't have a church at the national level because we have churches established at the state level. It says that? Where does it say that in the Constitution, that we're only doing this because we have churches? Not only doing that, but we can see it in history and in the ratification debates. That's why in a number of states for decades after the ratification, you had established churches. And this changes through 19th century jurisprudence, unfortunately, but that has nothing to do, obviously, with the founding of the country. Furthermore, you have in the national anthem, which also comes from the 19th century, the notion that this be our motto and God is our trust, which is from a forgotten verse of the Star-Spangled Banner. You also have it in our money. You also have it in the benedictions and the invocations of the Continental Congress and the Constitutional Convention. So you also have it in the speeches of George Washington. And so, John Adams says that the American government will be based on the Christian morality. John Jay, first Chief Justice of the United States, says the same thing. He goes even further. Yeah, and I'm sure there's a bunch of quotes I can pull out from the other side. You can. There aren't really. Franklin. Yeah, there aren't. There's one from Thomas Jefferson. God took the Bible and cut out every reference to the supernatural and kept the rest for wisdom. Thomas Jefferson did make a commentary on the Bible and his views were a little odd, I grant you, but I've already granted to you that in a private letter, Thomas Jefferson advocated for a separation of church and state. And our Constitution does, right? There's there's a separation of church and state.
Where? You have the First Amendment.
Where do you see?
Congress shall make no, I can pull it up, we can read it word for word, right. But it is there. We didn't just all
Let's just read it.
This. Yeah,
listen, I didn't go to law school, so.
While she looks that up, one of the other questions I wanted to get into.
Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting free exercise thereof.
Right. So now
Congress
where do you
shall
see a
make-
separation of church and state there?
Well, when you say Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, that is that separation.
Right. And so what is the Congress?
The federal government, is that what you're saying? So you're saying
it's the lawmaking body for the federal government, right?
Yes, but if
before the incorporation
if
doctrine
the state of
incorporates it into the
California starts to be like, actually, in all our schools, we're going to start enforcing Christian ideology in our public schools, that would be unconstitutional under this First Amendment.
In fact, that was the way that basically all schools operated in the country until the middle of the 20th century.
Until the Supreme Court said that you can't have prayer
in schools and you can't teach the Bible.
because of the First Amendment.
Well, no, the middle step was the incorporation of the Bill of Rights to the
okay,
states,
sure, but that's been incorporated unless you
Right.
don't want that part.
Right, but you're just saying the country was founded on the separation of church and state. I'm saying that wasn't even brought up as a matter of jurisprudence until many decades later. And then it wasn't enforced in schools until a century after that.
Yeah, because no rights were, right? That's what the incorporation.
No, I
I
think
guess
there
I'm
were
just confused.
rights.
Do you believe the Bill of Rights is like a founding document or not?
The Bill of Rights is
Yes.
a list of 10 amendments to the U.S.
Yes.
Constitution.
Do you believe it is a founding document when it comes to like basically the United States as a whole?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So then, to me, I don't understand why the conversation is continuing, because if you believe the Bill of Rights is integral to the founding of this nation, and the Bill of Rights, the First Amendment states that no religion shall be.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, I think you're misunderstanding what that phrase meant to the people who wrote it and the people who lived under that government.
It just seems to me, where would the misunderstanding be?
I think you're misunderstanding that the Bill of Rights did not apply to the states at the time, and the lack of an establishment of a church at the national level does not imply that there cannot be an establishment of a church at the state level, which we know for a fact there was at the time of ratification.
I guess I am a little bit confused, because I don't understand if the Bill of Rights is part of the federal basically legislator, right? It's part of the federal law.
But we have a
and
federal
we are under,
system.
yeah, but the whole point of creating the Constitution, and according to the Federalist Papers as well, is that, oh no, we need some like overarching law that, you know, goes throughout the nation, so that way that we can be a united nation.
Not exactly. So
Do you agree that the Bill of Rights was not, even when Thomas Jefferson at the time wanted, I guess, make all men equal? You guys agree or follow that? And nor the porn lady on the left, that went to law school, and I'm not sure what the purpose you have a law degree and you're doing OnlyFans, but anyhow, why she's really want to attack that, I might do some looking up of the Bill of Rights. Let me look at it right now. Make sure you guys like the stream and share the stream. Support the channel, 20 and up. You get a special video of a super thanks super chat. All right, let me look at. Was Thomas Jefferson opposing the Constitution? Or having all men equal, or was it the states? Let's look that up. Thomas was not opposed to the Constitution, but he did have serious reservations about it when it was first drafted. His biggest concern, it lacks a Bill of Rights to protect individual liberties. He believes strongly in limit federal power, state rights, which made him weary of a strong central government. As for the phrase, all men are created equal, Jefferson wrote that in the Declaration of Independence, not the Constitution, okay? But here is the twist. When he said it, he didn't mean individual equality, the way we think of it today. At the time, it was more about asserting that Americans as a people had the same rights to self-govern as other nations. The idea of universal human equality grew in meaning over time, especially through movements for abolish civil rights and women's suffrage, okay? And yes, the states play a huge role in shaping the Constitution. Jefferson believes the power not explicitly given to the federal government should remain with the states The idea became central to Jefferson's feudalism, which emphasized decentralized power and local self-government. All right, so I'm not going in that. Let's continue with the tape. Various figures.
Federalism, right, refers to the principle of subsidiarity, to the view that there would be different levels of government, frankly, all the way down to the individual, right, and the family and the community and the state and the national government. And so certain powers and rights were reserved to the federal government, but they were relatively small at the ratification of the Constitution. And then many, many rights and laws and powers were reserved to the states, and then some were reserved to the people.
So do you think it's bad that the First Amendment now applies to all the states?
Let's try to keep it a little more focused on this. So I have a question for you guys. One, do we live in a patriarchy? And if so, and I want everybody to respond, do we live in a patriarchy? And if so, is the patriarchy good or bad? We'll start with Farah, come this way, and then we'll have Michael.
I think it's such semantics at this point. As of now, I'm going to say I don't think we necessarily live in a patriarchy. Do I think women are marginalized in a disproportionate way in relation to men? 100%. But would I use the term patriarchy as a blanket term? Not necessarily.
Yeah, I guess it depends on how a person is defining patriarchy.
Well, let's maybe start off by defining patriarchy.
Okay. If we're defining patriarchy as a system of power where men uphold most of governance and social power, I would say that there is an argument to be made that we currently live in a patriarchy. Whether that's good or I personally am of the thought that that's bad, but yeah, it depends on what definition you guys want to use. I'm open to it.
Do you guys concur with her definition of patriarchy?
Can you repeat it? Sorry.
Basically, it's a system of power where men hold
most of the capital.
Yeah,
the social.
Most of the capital, social, political power.
So obviously we know historically this is true, and if we're looking at a global level, are we going to refine it to United States, because these are going to be very different conversations.
And West, we could also
in the West. So I would say and you see this, that it's more prevalent in countries that are poorer, that have less technological advancement, as industrial machinery became a thing, and education and all that. And so now I don't think in the West, I'm not going to sit here and say women don't have equal rights. I think some of that history in certain ways, in maybe culture and our perception of men and women is still here, but no. And I would say that it hurts men and women to the same degrees, in some ways. Yeah, I would say that.
Okay, so Farah, you don't think that there's a patriarchy, or are you unsure?
I think the word patriarchy is a bit harsh, and I don't know if I would apply it to how we live in the West now.
Okay, but you two do believe there's an
argument to be made depending on what level you're talking about when it comes to power, or how much power you have to establish patriarchy.
Michael.
I guess I kind of think more than you do that we live in a patriarchy, not as a matter of law.
Yeah.
The law says we don't. The law, if anything, is inverted. We're closer to a matriarchy, except we don't have kids anymore, so there are fewer mothers. But as a matter of practical living, I think we still do live in a patriarchy. I think men wield probably more power than we ever did. It's just in a very perverted way. So men, wield the power to have casual hookups. Women statistically tend to not prefer casual hookups. Mm-hmm. Men tend to like them quite a lot more, and women prefer a longer lasting relationship.
That's what I would agree with. I think that's what I meant by cultural currency. I think men have the monopoly on the cultural zeitgeist, and then women move in lockstep to men's desires and the male gaze. So I would agree with that.
Yeah.
In terms of politically, I don't know if I would agree as much, but I agree with that definition.
Totally. And so, the irony though is that all of that sexual revolution came about because of feminism. But it didn't really give women, I think, what they thought they were going to get. I think if anything, it gave men more power. I remember thinking about this many years ago when I was in college, and the hookup culture was really burgeoning. Mm-hmm. I thought, is this the greatest trick that men ever played on women? Mm-hmm. That these women who call themselves feminists think that they're going to be empowered by letting men just use them whenever they want and then cast them aside and go sleep with some other woman. Girl power.
I completely agree, and I actually don't think women are the culprit or feminists are the culprit today of hookup culture. I think it's more like neocons, tradcons, pickup artists, the one who says that you need to unpack the female psyche by
traditionalists don't support hookup culture at all.
And I think
say as a proud traditionalist.
Yeah, I would say that also there's a distinction between the moral question, if you're a woman and you hook up, that's part of what the sexual revolution was there to do, is to give women autonomy, to be able to consent to things, to not have a scarlet letter, attached to them forever because they decided to do a hookup. And then the other question is is
They
it
still do.
healthy? No, not the same.
Of course they do.
If you look at
just
social
said you get
attitudes,
called a 304.
yeah, but if you look at social attitudes in the last 20 years on things like casual sex, basically, it's moving in this direction. The whole reason you have a show is because most people think like me and you have something to fight against.
I don't think so. I think I have a really popular show because, a lot of people are living under our cultural zeitgeist, but they realize that it's wrong. And
Some people, but if you look at polling and stuff, especially if you look at where like the institutional power is, like in media, in academia and stuff, like we have that power. We definitely influence the culture. And if you look at polling and you look at like 30 years ago, 40 years ago, how people felt about casual sex. So I agree that there's a moral question and what's actually good for you. And the truth is there is a small number of people, like women tend to have more restricted sociosexuality than men do, but there are some women.
What do you mean by sociosexuality?
Sociosexuality is how open you are to casual relationships. There's like an inventory and they like look at your desire, your behavior, your attitudes towards it, and men typically are more open to it than women are, but there is some like...
This is what they do when they take their psychology degree and they run game on a lot of men. Men, be careful. Better start reading on some things and some terminology or certain phrases used by psychologists like this chick. I'm just saying. Let's go.
There's like 10% or 5% of women who still, and I don't think there's anything wrong with those women going out and doing that, but I do think we need to put more of an emphasis on like, okay, the moral question, whether you're a whore if you do this, that's separate from, is this good for you? Is this going to make you feel good? Is this what you really want? Is it separate? I think it's separate.
Why would it be separate? If morality is concerned with what is right and what is wrong, and we are rational beings that recognize that some things are better than other things, then wouldn't it stand to reason that if you do more good things and fewer bad things, if you pursue more virtue and less vice, that you would be happier and flourish?
Maybe, is eating a donut immoral?
It depends if you've had like 5 donuts already.
Well,
then
we just have
probably
a different, to me, I don't think like eating fast food is immoral. It may not be good for you, but it's not immoral. And there isn't like this stigma associated with it where it's like, oh, nobody, like,
No, sex is obviously, I think, even more fundamental to human nature than donuts are. And I like donuts plenty. But, sex is very, very important to human nature.
That's true.
In part because the action is what propagates the species, or in our sterile age, does not propagate the species. But, you're a trained lawyer. Passed the bar exam, and you have spoken publicly about how because you've made other career choices,
Yeah, but she is an OnlyFans chick too that busted wide open for the fans, and also on a lot of adult sites where you see her getting her so-called back blown. Real talk. Just a disclaimer. Let's go.
Really can't work in the law. A firm would fire you. So it would seem to me, putting aside the justice or injustice of that fact, that there is still a major stigma associated with
But a lot of firms would actually hire me over you, probably still in 2020.
I don't have a law degree.
No, but my point is that some of the things you say are so controversial that with how I think I saw a little bit clip of your last thing where you said like Yale would like deny you even went there.
I think they want to burn my diploma.
That's my point.
That's a very liberal place.
Is that society is shifting and we're becoming more okay with things like sex work, but we're still not there 100%. But we still are very quick to cancel misogyny, and I'm not agreeing with it.
Negative. The society is still not moved forward and being progressive, saying that we're okay, you ladies, 18 up, doing sex work. You gotta pick a struggle, sweetie. Right? You bust it wide open and use him out to be a throat goat on the camera, or you get a regular job where it's a decent, respectful wage and be productive in society. You can't have it all, you can't have it both. It doesn't go both ways. No, I'm not sure what world you live in that now a society is slowly accepting that you have OnlyFans and you work the 9-to-5 on a major corporation. If you work in a corporation, they won't even take that because they'll be a laughing stock. Because first, if people start notice your face and they come across your information, they Google you, they're gonna see you putting a big something in your mouth. All right, let's continue.
I wouldn't say Yale is representative of the broader society, though. It's a kind of I love my alma mater.
I mean, if we're talking about law firms, if we're talking about good, like big time law firms, like they would have a harder time.
Wait, just a clarifying question. So you're thinking, broadly speaking, people will find a conservative political pundit more objectionable than a
in academia,
I totally agree.
In academia, in higher education, and in like corporate America, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I think you're probably right about that. Tells you a lot about the society.
Yeah, you can argue that, but to say like there are firms out there that would still take me over you.
But in reality, look, I mean, it's a funny line, and there is a lot of truth to that. But a lot of these videos that go viral from this show, in fact, and in the broader like red pill manosphere stuff, it's women who are being shamed for their sexual behaviors. Putting the justice or injustice of that aside for a second, those videos get a lot of views. Those attitudes are still very, very prevalent. And I think it's because no amount of feminist indoctrination is going to alter basic aspects of human nature. And I think men broadly don't want their wives to be promiscuous. And look, everybody has a past, and I think there's all sorts of redemption and repentance, and I think that can all be great. But no one, as La Rochefoucauld said, hypocrisy is the tribute vice pays to virtue. No one, I think, really deeply desires that. And I don't...
The men who watch the show are going to selection bias there because they're going to be more likely to not desire that. They're probably going to spend more time on the internet. There's all these...
It's a very popular show, though.
But like this idea that men want a body count of 0 is not really replicated, I think, in normal society. That like they may not like you. Obviously, there's a spectrum here. Like your girl doing porn is different than having 3 bodies, right? Like different, there's gonna be different levels of men who are okay with one and not the other, but we do have a culture war for a reason, because there is enough people on this side who are like, actually, there's nothing wrong with having casual sex. Actually, there's nothing whatever about doing OnlyFans. And I think tradcons can be super happy living a tradcon life, but you guys are the ones telling us we can't be happy and there's nobody out here on our side.
No, look, we're observing certain facts of society and mentioning them. And, but also we're recognizing that the liberal view of society, that we're all just individuals and don't yuck my young man, that doesn't really work because we live in society. So I keep bringing up the trans thing because it's just the clearest example of all these different topics we're talking about. The pro-trans argument was, just let me dress up in a skirt. How does it bother you? I'm doing it in the privacy of my own home. Stop yucking my yum. Okay, fine. Okay, well, if I'm going to wear a skirt, you're going to call me Shelley. All right, Steve, I'll call you Shelley. Fine, whatever. Oh, okay, and if you're going to call me Shelley and I'm going to wear a skirt, then I'm going to go use the women's bathroom. Now, hold on, Steve. Sorry, Shelley. You can't, my daughter goes into the women's bathroom. Well, I'm a woman, and I say I'm a woman. You have no damn right to say that I'm not a woman. Well, no, I do have a right to say you're not a woman. I do have a right to suggest that you not behave like a weirdo in public, and I do have a right to say you get out of my daughter's bathroom, because I've got faculties of reason and I live in society. And to quote John Stuart Mill, who's one of the most important liberal thinkers of all time, in his essay on liberty, he points out, we want a lot of protections for privacy, but there are not really any totally private vices. If a guy is just a big drunk and he just drinks all the time, maybe he does it in his own home and it doesn't bother you, but then maybe he neglects his family and his family can't eat, and then maybe he doesn't go to his job, and maybe he doesn't pay his taxes, and maybe he doesn't contribute to the community that he lives in. And maybe we have a right in the political community to put some limits on individual autonomy, because it's degrading to individuals, and you get all the individuals together, that's your society.
Yeah, I don't know. I just kind of want to push back on the idea that basically being trans is the same as being a drunkard. And I think the reason why is because I'm
not saying they're the same. They're just both similar. A bit deviant and suffer defects of will and intellect.
Okay, I guess my question to you is, when does something deviant become harmful? Because there's a lot of deviant behaviors out there. I don't think most of them are harmful. I don't think most of them are bad. But obviously you think that there's something bad about being trans and being drunk enough to do the analogy. So my question is, when does deviance become harmful?
And do you believe it should be enforced through law, or are you just talking social? Do you think we should put in, because there's a lot of rights that we hold up even when they're free speech, people say mean words, but we still are the right is so important. Guns, they
sometimes we have limits on speech.
Of course, I think I agreed with everything you said. There should be limits. The question is, where should those limits be and how should they be enforced? And that's my question.
We should probably arrive at them through prudence and very carefully. Okay. I don't think there's a right 5 bullet points on a napkin answer to this, as some ideologues do. I think we have prudence for a reason, and it's the, sorry, my dear, it's the consummate political virtue. But Also, when you say should it be enforced through social norms or through the law, I'm not sure there's a total firm distinction here. It's very fashionable of the libertarians to say politics is totally downstream of culture. Or so, oh, yeah, sure, that's true in as far as it's true. But also the law is a tutor. And so the law creates certain incentives and disincentives. If you're going to punish certain behaviors, you're actually going to get less of that behavior. And if you encourage certain behavior, you're going to get more of that behavior. So it comes back to the transition.
Well, I mean, there's still a big difference. Like, I actually like what you guys do. I watch it because I like to hear different opinions. No, I like to listen to different opinions and stuff, but I have no problem with you getting on and trying to advocate for like getting rid of things like no-fault divorce. Now, if you guys pass the law, like I think you should have the complete right to do that, convince people, but passing the law is a very different thing.
Well, you would have to pass a law if you're talking about a law, right? You're talking about, right?
But I think it's much different to try to get people to not get divorced or advocate for that position.
Well, look, I think everybody, unless you're the most hardened radical feminist maniac, you don't like divorce, right? You're not saying we want more divorce.
But I think people should have the freedom to
right, so you're merely talking about the right. And so I guess my question then is, put aside legal divorce for cause. What is gained by no-fault divorce? What's the good of that?
Oh, there's a bunch of good when it comes to no-fault divorce. Previously, when we had fault divorce, people would literally have to like lie or commit vices in order to be able to get divorced. So whether it was like...
Why don't they just not get divorced, though, if there's no fault?
The problem is if they...
Yeah, that's a good question. Why get divorced? There's no fault. That's an excellent question. Can you answer, Mary?
Decide to like not get divorced. Usually that leads to like higher rates of unhappiness. It leads to people having like more tension within their marriage. There is tension.
I don't know.
Yeah, but marriage is not designed for always happiness. It is duty. Always had, always will. There's certain days you're not gonna be happy to do some ish, but you always gotta fulfill a duty. Just like the man. Man's not gonna be happy all the time, but he has to fulfill a duty. So what is the problem? Fair use.
I'm not convinced of that.
Well, yeah.
Again, because I think, happiness has declined for everybody, and especially for women over the time that we've had these laws.
But we can look at people who, reportedly stay in marriages where they're unhappy and like the long-term effects of that, even like psychologically, health-wise. We can look at abusive relationships, situationships where the woman feels like she can't leave, even in an era of no-fault divorce.
That would be fault. Right, that's not no-fault divorce.
Yeah,
that's like my husband punched me in the face.
The problem with fault divorce, right, is that you're already instituting like a burden of proof onto like these abuse victims that would basically prolong the process of them getting away from their abusive partner, right?
You could separate and you could move out, the same night.
So basically, you're saying that you're okay with advocating for a system where they're basically not married in all the ways that matter, but just not legally?
I don't know what matters.
Well, they're not living together. They're not being intimate together. Their children are in basically separate homes because you're saying the woman can leave, but she cannot
I'm opposed to divorce, but we're speaking specifically now about no-fault divorce, because we're probably not going to agree on divorce broadly, but we might at least agree that no-fault divorce is very, very bad. Because you're saying, well, if one is not able to have a no-fault divorce, then, they might have to stick with that spouse that they don't like that much, or the spouse got kind of fat and I don't like him anymore, whatever. But first of all, it's definitely better for the kids, in as much as the studies are reliable on this. Kids who grow up in a home of a mother and a father bound together in marriage do better across every single criterion. But furthermore, you're neglecting the negative aspects of divorce. I mean, when people do get divorced, and then if they have kids, and God forbid they get divorced, then if you introduce a stepfather into that relationship, the odds that those kids are abused or sexually assaulted go through the roof. The odds that and actually, at a more basic level, because we could rattle off the statistics all day, at the basic level, we recognize that the marriage is the fundamental political unit. The liberals say the individual is the fundamental political unit, but I think that's bunk. I think it's the family, because political means multiple people,
Just to go on the data really quick, I mean, they're staying in a household with conflict is worse than...
But they'll have the conflict in divorce. I mean, this is
no.
Yeah,
it's better for yes, you're right. But also when you factor in education and socioeconomic status, a lot of that dissipates. So what's happening usually is that poor people are more likely. So it's all jumbled up. But also
poor people are less likely to get married in the first place and more likely to have kids out of wedlock.
But being a child in a home with conflict between the parents is worse than having.
Right, but then why isn't the answer resolve the conflict?
Because
rather
people
than-
can't. We're human beings. You're the one who's talking about human nature.
Yeah,
human
but I think-
nature. We're clearly not successful at staying with one person forever.
We
and
have
not
been
having-
at a much higher rates in the recent past. So, unless we're suggesting that no one can progress, that no one can improve their behavior, then I think we can get better at that. And I think part of the reason why divorce rates spiked is because the law encouraged divorce rates to spike. And because, to give the red pill guys their due, because family courts have been horribly unjust to men, and because we have a liberal idol in our society of radical individualism that says, who cares what happens to my spouse or my
when in
kids?
recent history were we really good as a human species on lifelong, healthy bonds? Like serial monogamy
In the
seems to
United
be what we're
States?
good. I don't, but this thing, you don't know just because of someone staying together. Like there's a lot of people who had parents that stayed together that are all sorts of messed up because the parents fought, there was alcoholism in the house. There's all types of things.
They're all bad things
Just
that
people
can happen.
staying together isn't isn't a good metric for childhood well-being.
Well, it's a good predictor of outcomes, but I totally grant to you that, there are bad marriages. I just think if the law is then going to intervene, the way the law has intervened is by dissolving the marriages and creating all sorts of incentives to get divorced and to not get married in the first place. But if the law is going to intervene because of all these problems, why wouldn't the law intervene to make marriage more sustainable,
Well, the law
to
isn't
encourage marriage?
The law really isn't intervening per se. People are choosing whether they want to apply this law to their life or not. So people are choosing that they want to get divorced or choosing if they want to work things out. The difference is that now you have a choice on whether you think the person you're with is actually somebody you can continue having a sustainable relationship with.
But
and if the answer is no, then
to quote Simone de Beauvoir, that famous feminist, if you give people a brand new choice, if you give people a preferable choice, given their social circumstances, they might just take it.
And women fare off this idea that women are like, to fight back on the red pill, that women are just incentivized to divorce. Women fare off far worse financially after divorce. They're way more likely to seek government assistance, be in poverty. They're less likely to repartner. So this idea that women are just running to the divorce court to get money is just not true.
Well, no, they are divorcing at much higher rates. That's undeniable. And I'm totally with you. Divorce is horrible for women. So sometimes feminists make the argument that I think perhaps we were getting to a little earlier, the argument that you just contradicted, which is, divorce is so good for women. It's a wonderful choice. They really need to have this choice. It makes their lives better. No, it doesn't. Basically, all the time, it makes their lives much worse, to say nothing of the ways that it harms their children.
Well, no. What it's basically saying is that if a person is willing to take all these worst outcomes, like economically, socially, whatever, imagine how bad that relationship must have been.
Or imagine
that
how
a woman
diluted
decided, like, hey, you know what? Instead of like trying to continue this, it is so toxic and so unhealthy that this is a better alternative.
Or they have been diluted by a lot of propaganda over the years,
Look,
which is that divorce
you
is
seem
good.
very sane. I'm sure you and your wife have really great ways of communicating and resolving your conflicts. Do you know how crazy people are? Like,
they can be.
Yeah, like to say that that's going to work for everybody and everybody should just stay in this when people are not emotionally even mature enough.
Look, I certainly style myself Prince Charming, so I'm glad to hear that we all agree. But you're right. Maybe people engage in more vicious and harmful behaviors. So I guess my question is, if we agree that certain cultural practices can make people behave better, and certain cultural practices can make people behave worse, shouldn't we be doing everything we can to make people behave better? And that's what we did in the classical political arrangement of society, right? You know, the basic point of politics is do good and avoid evil. Then, under liberalism, you had a new point of society. The new point of society was to just expand individual autonomy maximally, on the, I think, false supposition that that would make people happier. And we've had a couple hundred years now, and we've seen how it's played out, and it hasn't played out very well at all. So why don't we go back to the one that worked for all of human history?
So, one, do you think that's possible or going to happen? And two, would you then be in favor, because education, female education, seems to be a big predictor of, one, we're the only ones whose marriage rates are not falling, they're going up, and we're less likely to get divorced. So do you then, would you advise women, instead of getting married really young and living this traditional lifestyle, to maybe go get educated
the best predictor of women staying married and flourishing and having lots of kids and being happy and not even trying to get divorced, it's not education. though education is some predictor of that.
Big one.
It's religion.
Yeah, you're true, but you can't make people. We're just becoming less religious as a society. This thing you guys have, where let's turn the clock back. Let's turn the clock back.
I don't want to turn any clocks back. I just want to turn our heads back to reason.
You can't make
and reason
people
is founded
believe in
logic,
something.
Who is God?
Yeah, exactly. But the logic and the reason and the age of information, a lot of people now have access to it, and they're going, actually, this kind of seems like bullshit. And they can't. You can't make.
No, I don't think that's why people have become irreligious. I don't think it's because they've all gotten much better educated and read a lot more books.
They read Christopher Hitchens. I agree with you.
No, I think they heard a Christopher Hitchens video once, and
it's undeniable that more and more people are identifying as non-religious. That this is just the trend that it's going in, and I don't know how much, as great as the Daily Wire is, how much you guys are going to be able to reverse that. So maybe we should look at how we can move forward with the society we have instead of trying to turn the clock back in a way that.
But it's not a clock. It's not a clock. We're not going. I'm not making a time machine. I'm just saying that there's truth and there's falsehood, and we are embracing a lot of falsehood in society, and that's leading to a lot of ugliness and a lot of depravity. And if we want less of all that stuff and we want more like good, true, and beautiful things, maybe we should use our reason to recognize really basic things like God exists. I'm not telling you you've got to come to traditional Latin Mass tomorrow. You could wait until Sunday. But, at the very least, we should recognize, hey guys, some things are better than others, right? The minute you grant that some things are better than others, ultimately, you have to grant that there is a maximal good, a summum bonum, who is God, right? We should recognize, hey guys, effects follow causes. And if you go back on the list of causes far enough, there's going to be an uncaused cause, who is God. And
there's really great arguments against
Jasmine, before I have you go, I would like to hear a little bit more from Farah, if you'd like to weigh in.
I was just going to ask, maybe I missed it. So what do you think the ideal form of marriage is? Like the woman goes to college and then she meets a guy in college and then she taps out of her career?
I don't know that going to college is really great for anybody these days. I'm pro-education, obviously. I mean, and I'm not even one of these conservatives who says, you should all just study engineering or whatever. I think that's bunk. I think you should read old books and acculturate yourself. But I don't think most colleges accomplish this these days, including the really fancy colleges, Harvard, Yale, Princeton. I don't know that maybe you can get an education there. I'm not totally convinced you can. And so, I get women should be educated. But, frankly, these days, you send your kids to a homeschool co-op, they'll start learning Latin in the 3rd grade. You send your kids on the track to go to Yale or Harvard, and they're probably not going to know anything by the time they graduate. I would love my wife to be educated. My wife is extremely educated, and I would love my wife to be a wife and a mother. And I guess the image that I think of for marriage is not as, the modern way of talking about it, where you say, this is my partner. It sounds like a gay accounting firm. This is my total indistinguishable partner. No, I want a.
It is somewhat gay when you use the word partner. For those that don't know, now you know. Phrase.
Wife, man, and I want a mother for my children. I want to be a father, and that involves different roles, and that involves complementarity.
Well, that's what I'm asking. So are you saying that maybe they'll get educated outside of college, reading books or whatever, and then after that they should focus at age 23, 24, getting married, and then not pursuing a career and focus on family life? Yeah,
I'm not going to prescribe exactly at what age people ought to get married. They certainly ought to get married younger. I wish I'd gotten married younger. I don't.
But you would prescribe that they focus on a career with precedence.
Generally speaking, I think women will be less happy if they are going to the widget factory to work for Mr. McGillicuddy, so that they can make money that I will then receive from my wife to pay some other woman to raise our children. Mm-hmm. I think that's an extremely inefficient and disordered way to have a marriage, and I don't think it makes anybody particularly happy.
I guess it confuses me coming from a tradcon, because you guys believe in the design of a lot of things. You believe in the design of sex and what's the most optimal use of sex. Why did God give us sex? Yes, and you would say the end of sex would be to pair bond and reproduce. So if women were not meant to pursue careers, why would God, according to your Christian purview, you're Christian, right?
Yeah.
Equip us with so many rational faculties. Why are women so good at aerospace engineering, nanotech, pediatrics,
I don't know if I'd say they're so good at aerospace engineering.
Why are women
scoring higher than you guys in every subject?
Why is that?
They're not totally represented in these fields.
My question is, if tradcons use God as their purview for, use our faculties as the metric for what we should be pursuing,
about this.
Why is it that women are now outgraduating men basically 2 to 1, but then you guys are prescribing?
Because the colleges are total nonsense now, and they have a bunch of fake majors, and it's a scam.
It's law fake major? Because now we have more female first-year associates.
Right, and law school is largely a scam, too, and you've got a glut of lawyers.
Well, my question is, why would God equip us with these things, these faculties, if God did not want us as women to pursue these faculties and instead abandon it at first step for marriage and kids?
The premise of your question is that raising children and running a family and the domestic economy is not a rational activity.
It's not that it's a rational activity, but why
Why
equip
give
us to be
more?
so good at STEM and college
What
and
could
all
be
these
more?
pursuits?
What could be
No,
more
no, no.
important than raising a
I'm not
family?
saying, I'm saying why give women the ability to both have a child and still be able to read like intellectual texts or
To educate the
to look
child.
at aerospace engineer. Well, that's the thing. You can
Wait,
educate
to
your
raise your kid
child,
to be an aerospace engineer,
Wait,
I guess,
wait.
if
but
you're
you
really
can't be an
interested in
aerospace
that.
engineer yourself.
Women can if they like. They generally don't do that.
No, I'm asking, so is that your position, that God equipped women to be as good at STEM, to outgraduate men, all to just
Yeah,
pursue
they're not
homeschooling
You know,
for
if you
their
look
children?
at like Fields Medal recipients, Larry Summers got fired from Harvard for pointing this out. But this is the top prize in mathematics. Until about 10 years ago, no woman had ever won the prize, and now I think one woman has won it. And I'm not knocking. There are plenty of women who are much more intelligent than me. The reason Larry Summers, who's as far as social scientists goes, is a very respected one, and he's a big lib. But he pointed out that the reason why men tend to dominate in the highest intellectual fields is not because men are simply smarter than women, but because the bell curve of intelligence for men is wider than that of women. So
But for a society, isn't it like societies that allow women to work, even us, if we hadn't had women, we brought in like trillions of dollars to the economy to take out half of the minds in the world. In the world,
Yeah, I
because
think life
the
is
bell
about more than
curve,
money.
the top. I agree, but if you want a flourishing, wealthy society, you can't do
I
that
don't
by
think we're
eliminating
I don't
women
think-
from the workforce.
I agree that we're wealthier today than we were 50 years ago. I'm not sure that we're flourishing more than we are. I mean, we're literally a dying society, right? We haven't had above replacement births since 1971.
Would you be
Yeah,
okay
well-
with immigration as a way to?
That's why we have mass migration, but mass migration causes all sorts of social problems,
Wait.
which is why it's deeply unpopular.
Before we pivot,
including on
I
the
do want to
left.
pin down your position on this. So yes, the bell curve is wider for men, but on average, the average women are smarter than the average men. Obviously, at the ends of the curves, there's
That wouldn't.
there's
that would
more
not be
unintelligent
implied by-
men and more
the
high
first-
intelligent.
The first thing you said that wouldn't imply the second, right?
It's not implied. That's just the fact. Is the bell curve is wider for men? Like there's more
Right. So that-
unintelligent
so that
men
would-
and
are
more
you-
intelligent men.
Are you
Right.
talking about the greater male variability hypothesis? Is that
I'm
Yeah.
saying there's on average women are more intelligent than men, but if you look at the most intelligent people, they're more likely
But
to be men. If you look at the least intelligent
first
people,
thing-
they're less likely to be men. So I'm asking you from your Christian purview, because if you're a nihilist, you're atheist, you could just be like, oh, that's randomized, who cares? It doesn't necessarily mean it's best for
If
society.
you're a nihilist, you can't say anything at all, because nothing means anything.
Well, that was my point. If you're a nihilist, you could just say those curves should not be indication of how we should live society. But as a Christian, if you think sex is most optimized for certain purposes, you would probably think intelligence is best optimized for certain purposes. So why would God equip the average woman to be smarter than men? Do you think it's just for homeschooling their children?
Again, the claim that you made at first, which is that men and women have bell curves, the men's bell curve being wider than the woman's, would not imply that the average woman is smarter than the average man.
Oh, no.
It would line them up
the
exactly.
curve itself
Right? Yeah.
implies or actually indicates that
No, it would
on
just be the
average.
extremes.
No,
Right,
no.
it would-
If you actually look at the curves at the top, it's women. The women's curve is taller than the men's curve.
But the IQ of the curve would be on the x-axis, right? That's where you get the extremes. So I think.
So are you disputing that on average women are more intelligent than men?
As would Larry Summers, as would the people who have studied this. But again, I think it's secondary to the point. Your point is
My
the more
point
interesting
is, why
point
would
of your
God equip us
why
to
would
be
God make
so
women
good at
smart?
school
Yeah,
and
yeah.
STEM?
Yeah, yeah.
If women on average were doing really, really poorly in STEM and all these, like if men
Sure.
were the one outgraduating us 2-1, then I can understand from a Christian purview saying like, see, God doesn't want you to be good at school because God wants you to focus on these more domestic pursuits.
Yeah.
But how can you look at all this evidence and think that we're, you know what I mean? We're
Yeah.
so specifically designed by God and then deny that?
I think.
Make sure you guys like the stream, support the channel. Hey, I had to pause this for a sec about this thing about STEM and girls. If there are remember there are more women than men. Let's be clear here. If these women were all doing so well in STEM, we would see more women in STEM in person and what they have done and what they accomplished. If you scour the internet and pay attention to detail, you don't hear enough of any woman that's doing anything evolutionary that brings something that society could use now in the present day. I haven't heard it. You haven't heard it. So there's no need to fact check that one. Let's continue.
I think you've bought the big lie of feminism that goes back to Mary Wollstonecraft, which is that men are endowed with greater virtue than women, and I think it's just bunk.
No.
It's saying the opposite. She's
No,
saying the
you're
opposite.
saying what you're saying is that the most important things to do, the most impressive things to do, just the greatest stuff to do, is to do what most men do, which is go out and work some job.
No, I didn't even like moralize. I didn't even say that STEM and aerospace and all these industries that women are good at are even morally good. I was just saying they happen to be good at these things. So from a Christian purview, you're the one who would ascribe morality to that.
You're saying it's better to do that, I think, because you're saying
from a Christian purview, because you think from a Christian purview what you're good at is what you should do. So if women are better at childrearing, they should do that. If sex is best used in this specific use, then people should do that.
In that narrow reading, then I think it's pretty clear most women are better at raising children than building rocket ships. So I think probably most women would prefer that. But even more broadly, I think you're exalting male professions in a foolish way. I think that you're.
I'm not even hyping them up. I'm just asking you.
I think you are hyping
from
them up.
your theist purview. Why would God make women so good at STEM and college and all these pursuits if God just wanted us to tap out as soon as we met a man and just focus
I'm not
on child rearing?
Sure. Look, women do fine on certain tests, but.
We're doing great.
You're doing great.
On a lot of tests.
Sure.
Better than you.
Well, perhaps. I don't know.
No, I mean, the future...
I defer to your knowledge of your...
The future of academia is unequivocally female. Do you deny that?
I agree that the future of academia is bleak. And so if you think that it implies that women will dominate academia, then you said it, not me. But I don't think that the future of anything is female. I think the future of the human race will be the complementarity of the sexes and marriages and children, or there will be no future of the human race.
This is something I also wanted to point out to earlier. You're saying that people are having less children, that's a bad thing, but I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing. And the reason why, at least from what we see when we compare better developed countries to less developed countries, is that people are choosing to have fewer children, but they're choosing to invest more in those fewer children. So back in agricultural times, people had to have a lot of children because they had to have those children work in the farm, basically take over chores, take over a bunch of stuff. So they would have 7 or 8 children, a lot of times malnourished, a lot of them died, versus now where it's they might have 1 or 2 children, but those children are well-fed, they're getting well-educated.
They're getting all the best psychiatric drugs in the country.
Well, do you think that, I guess here's the other problem. Earlier on, we were talking about hey, you know what, things are getting better measured now than before. That's why the whole thing about people are less happy now is not necessarily true. Do you think that, let's say, middle of nowhere country in Africa or something, where they're malnourished, have a family of 7, do you think those people are happier because they can't report it, or they're living technically more of a traditional lifestyle than somebody in a Nordic country or European country?
Yeah, I think the word traditional is doing a lot of work there. I agree that sub-Saharan Africa and Oklahoma are different, but I don't think it's a totally fair comparison. And I agree it's better to be nourished than to be malnourished. I agree with that as well. But I don't think that one necessarily needs 2 lawyer incomes and a Tesla and a big screen TV and 5 iPhones to be able to thrive and flourish. I think we've become far too materialistic, and we now know the price of everything and the value of nothing. So we've got more money than ever, but we're all miserable.
But when you cited the data on the 2-parent households, but socioeconomic status and education, especially maternal education, are big predictors of childhood outcomes.
Okay, somebody wrote something in the comment section. Hold on, let me look. I'm gonna look at your comment in a second. Make sure you guys like the stream. Okay. Lena Positivize writes, that's not necessarily true. Women have been contributing to STEM. Marie Curie, pioneer of the radioactive research, discovered that elements plutonium and radiation swimming with the wind. Okay. Now, Lena, you know what I'm about to say. I'm talking about society as a whole, where many women, because every invention today is still being created, produced by the men in the society. Women do not, as a whole, make majority of the products or everything that we see or consume today that are under STEM. There are some that made some things that is needed, but as a whole collective, no. Still, the men are the innovators, the ones that's creating things. Even to the word we hear that you see a lot of women don't like to do those type of degrees because those require more technical stuff, which any person could do, let's keep real, if they put the time and energy into it. But overall, they don't like doing those type of things. Anyway, let's keep going.
outcome. So how come the data on two-parent households, we should follow that, but not the one on...
Yeah, no, I'm fine with women being smart. I like when women are smart and well-educated, because they're raising my children,
Yeah,
one is raising my children. I'm not, if I were living in Africa, maybe I'd have 5.
This is where you deviate from the red pill.
Right, true. But, it is said that the hand that rocks the cradle is the hand that rules the world. So when a man chooses a woman to be his wife and to raise his family, he is entrusting her with his life, so I don't think he wants her to be a dummy or to be vicious or to be anything like that. He would have no incentive to do so.
But it's better to have fewer kids that you can, it seems like, provide more for and make sure than to have 10 kids and none of those kids end up being or flourishing.
I think it's good to be open to life. I think that one of the big problems in our society is that we've embraced sterility. So we're sterile intellectually, artistically, philosophically, and literally. We don't have any kids, and we exalt as some kind of supposed political right sterile forms of sex. So I wouldn't recommend that at all. And I think when you get married, to my earlier point, you're giving yourself wholly over to another person. And so you shouldn't withhold anything. You should be totally open to life for the unity of the spouses.
Is that practical in modern society?
I
feel
can
like you have a
tell
very idealistic view.
Oh, no, I think I can tell you from experience.
Well, you're
it's
very
totally
successful.
Practical.
You're very successful. You're not struggling to feed your kids.
No, I'm not. I haven't been totally canceled yet. That's true. But I know people who make less money than I do.
I have
a lot less money, and they've got a million kids, and
Here,
they're very
Pixie,
happy.
you go ahead, and I will shift gears a little bit after you go. Go
Okay,
ahead.
I just have some points of clarification quickly. So if you believe that people should be open to life, do you believe basically should we have universal child daycare? Do you believe that we should
No, I think we
some-
should have mothers and fathers.
Okay. Do you not, if you're talking about how women should be more traditional or stay at home more, but you agree that our current economic circumstances doesn't necessarily allow for that household, it seems to me like one potential solution to this would be hey, you know what, better paternal and maternity leave. So then that way, the household doesn't suffer the income, but
Listen,
the woman can go.
I support 18 years of maternity leave. I think, forget about 18 months. I think it should be 18 years.
Paid? Do you believe women should be paid for staying in the household?
In principle, I'm not opposed to it. The problem is it would create so many bad incentives and it would be so inefficiently managed by the central government.
Well, 18 years.
But you wouldn't.
18 years would be tough. But in principle,
maybe have at least something.
But to your point, in principle, look, there's one country in the West that has managed to turn around the birth rate problem, and they haven't solved it yet, but they've ticked it up a little bit in the opposite direction, and that's Hungary. And the way they did it was they said that once you have 4 kids, you don't have to pay income tax anymore. And that's a great way to encourage people to have kids. So, I'm not sure.
I don't disagree with that.
Would I suggest that we just start sending checks for each baby that you pop out? That's probably an overly simplistic way to do it. But should the government, which is really an expression of the people and self-government, should we encourage and support having families rather than passing laws that discourage families? 100%.
Yeah, I'm for pro-family policy. I think we all are.
Yeah.
Pixie, did you have more?
No, I was just trying to see if you agreed with that or not, because I've met a couple conservatives who are like, oh no, we shouldn't pass laws like that. So
Yeah, well, the libertarians get feisty about any time you say that we should do anything in politics, but no, I'm fine as long as it's prudent. The point that you raised at first, though, would be terribly wrong, which would be to say, all right, now we've got guaranteed daycare. That would only make the problem worse, right? If we want families to be stronger and we want families to be incentivized to have more children and to raise their own children.
Sorry, I do have one more thing. I guess what I don't understand is that earlier you were talking about the community. The community is important. Liberals are too individualized.
Yeah.
But to me, it seems like programs like universal daycare or such of the matter do foster a sense of community. I don't think a child was meant to be raised by just one single person, not even just a mom.
Nor
it's
do
meant
I.
To be raised by
I
the
think there's at least
community.
2 people involved.
Yeah, I think more. I think we live a whole society that, should take care of the children.
Yeah. So your insight is, or your inclination is right, which is, it takes a village.
Mm-hmm.
Much as I dislike Hillary Clinton, that phrase itself is not objectionable. But it takes a village. It doesn't, I don't think it takes a contrived product of some technocracy that creates the, sterile and clinical preschool program, daycare program. That's not a real organic community. That's not a community where people are accountable to one another, where people have natural bonds that begin with the family and extend to the extended family and then to the neighborhood and to Mrs. McGillicuddy down the street.
How would you because religion has done a really good job at this, creating these fostering these communities, but the bottom line is people just don't believe in it. There's a question question of if it's beneficial and if it's true. What's your plan to convince more people that it's true and that they should follow it? Because everything is pointing the opposite way. We're going the opposite way.
Beneficial means is good, and true means is true. And some people think these are divorced. I don't think they're divorced. Well, I think I hold to an old-fashioned view that there are the three transcendentals, which is goodness, truth, and beauty, and that they involve one another. So something that is good is likely to be true, and something that is false is likely to be harmful.
Okay, so let's say if transgenderism was shown to be beneficial, I know you don't believe that, would it then be true?
I'm confident that it won't be shown to be beneficial.
But if it was, would you then? Is that really?
You're asking me if if 2 + 2 equaled 5, would that change my view of mathematics? I suppose it would. But the reason that I'm so confident, every time some pro-trans activist comes out and says there is a new study that shows the brain scans of Bruce Jenner mean that he's really a lady or whatever, and then it never turns out to be true.
Are you doing the whole perception is real? Like if it was beneficial to me to believe in unicorns, does that make unicorns real?
I don't think it. I guess our disagreement would go back one step even further. I don't think it's beneficial to believe in fantasies. I think that.
So that's what people don't like religion.
But I think I agree that atheists and liberals have denigrated religion for centuries now. But I don't think it's a fantasy. I don't think that it's just a comforting thought.
Neither do transgender. Like my point is
right, but they're wrong and I'm right. I guess.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it goes down to.
But one of us is going to be right.
What makes you believe that that Catholic doctrine is true?
Well, I believe, to quote the First Vatican Council, that the existence of God, I'm not saying all the other stuff, but the existence of God can be known with certainty by natural human reason from the created world.
Yeah, I'm not debating about the existence of God. I'm saying specifically Catholic doctrine, that it goes beyond
so
just existence of God.
If we all agree that God exists and can be known through reason, and maybe we're making a leap there, but you seem at least to grant it. But at least you grant it. Then the question is, okay, well, who is God? And here is where revelation gets involved. And
but is revelation not just
why not the Viking god?
Wait, is revelation not just like the word of somebody else essentially claiming to have these truths revealed by God?
It's the word of a great many people played out throughout history. So for instance, it was very recently Christmas, and so the revelation of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ is in the incarnation, and then he lives for 33 years, and then suffers a passion, is crucified, and is resurrected on the third day. At least that's how the story goes, right? Well, why would I believe that story? What reason do I have to believe? That's a crazy story, isn't it? People don't just rise from the dead. Well, part of the reason I might believe it is because the gospel accounts were all written within living memory. A part of the reason I might believe this is because 11 men went to their deaths to defend, a fable? To defend 11 men just all suffered the same defect of perception. One of the reasons I would believe it is it's attested to in non-Christian history. One of the reasons I might believe this is that there were 500 witnesses to the resurrection. So, and then another reason I might witness this, which gets to your point of the relation between goodness and truth, is that religion spread to the entire world, and we haven't even gotten into the other historical coincidences of this, and led to a civilization that was extraordinarily powerful, flourishing. I mean, nothing like it has ever existed on the face of the earth, and never would again if it were to go away. This would all seem to point to at least some little kernel of truth in that.
I guess.
Final thing, and then I will move on. Go ahead.
Final thoughts on that. To me, it doesn't necessarily follow that just because a lot of people believe something, it means that there's a kernel of truth to it, right? I feel like
not necessarily.
Yeah, it seems to me that the same arguments that you used could be used when it comes to trying to justify Islam, for example. That a lot of people have gone and fight and died for it.
Islam didn't spread peacefully as Christianity did.
But
the fastest growing religion, so isn't it?
Yeah, it's still the fastest growing religion right now. But the point that I'm trying to get across is that ultimately it seems like your belief in the Catholic faith and doctrine goes back to hey, a lot of other people seem to believe this, so then that leads to
perhaps I misspoke.
Quick response.
Yes. A quick version of it. Perhaps I misspoke. My faith in the Catholic religion comes down to the existence of God being knowable through reason and the identification of God with the Logos. This would be something different than, say, in Islam, where Allah is totally transcendent. And as Ibn Hazm, the medieval Islamic writer, said, if God so willed it, he could make people worship idols. So mine identifies God with reason. So it's not just mere hearsay. Then there is a little bit of hearsay because all these people saw it and believed it and spread it throughout all of the world. And the religion was extraordinarily successful. And in that spread, one final difference, I suppose, is that with maybe two exceptions, Christianity spread peacefully everywhere that it spread. The two exceptions would be Charlemagne and I guess the Spanish Inquisition.
Yeah.
With Islam spread violently everywhere that it spread. And so I'm not even knocking the Muslims, I'm just pointing out one was reliant largely on reason. And so it would seem to me that the faith is reasonable.
Okay, shifting gears here a little bit.
All right, guys. I'm gonna have to pause here for whatever reason. I'll follow up with the other part 2 of this. Hope you got some so far on this. 1 second. Comments checking some. Let's see. All right. So this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna let y'all leave your thoughts so far in this conversation in the comment section below. What's your opinion of Mr. Michael Knowles debating these so-called feminists? Did he hold his own? Did he prove his point to these ladies? You leave your thoughts below. Like always, like, comment, subscribe to this channel. Links to follow me are in the description below. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Rumble, and become a member of the Chaos Rain Show as well. Oh, and also join my Discord service as well. Thank y'all for watching today. Be on the lookout for part 2. And till next time, guys. Till next time. The Chaos Rain.
Man, fuck all you hoes. Fuck you and your mammy and your granny too. And fuck all you hoes. I'm sick of this shit. Fuck all you hoes. And fuck all you. Don't give a damn, bitch, what you wanna do. And fuck all you hoes.
Things. So when it gets cold outside and you hear the hey big head, hey big head, hey big head, hey big head, hey big head.
They like the chaos.
They like the chaos. So when you're able to
The chaos.
let that chaos reign with,
The chaos.
let that chaos reign with,
The chaos
let that chaos reign with,
must reign.